how Thomas Tuchel will set up England. Today we're going to be diving into all the tactics, the formations and the key players under England's new German head coach. Before we dive into looking at the formation and how Thomas Tuchel will select his England team, what's his style? How do Thomas Tuchel teams actually play? Thomas Tuchel is tactically very flexible and has used a wide range of formations throughout his career, from back threes to back fours. Tuchel has found use for most modern setups, but regardless of the formation, there are general tactical concepts that are throughout his teams. They often create a back three in possession. Width is held by either wing backs or wingers depending on personnel, and most importantly, the German uses two number 10s, usually creating a sort of 3-2-2-3 attacking structure. Tuchel's style is all about control, either controlling the game by dominating possession or controlling the opposition through pressing. In possession, we see a positional approach, with chances coming from overloading one flank before exploiting the underloaded side with a switch of play. The 3-2-2-3 creates a lot of passing triangles that Tuchel leans on, with passing combination plays creating chances amongst the front three and wide triangles creating crossing situations. The majority of Tuchel's best football involves the number 10s, with them frequently looking to receive in between the lines or making underlapping runs towards the byline and crossing low to teammates. Without the ball, Tuchel is a pragmatic coach who will adjust his defensive block and pressing structure depending on the opposition. But again, there are some constants. Tuchel's defensive block is compact and hard to play through, often setting pressing traps in central midfield. His teams defend the central zone, forcing the opposition to play into the wide areas, and his team adopts zonal man-to-man hybrid system, which can be very, very tough to break down. So that's a flavour of what Thomas Tuchel will bring to England. But looking at some stats during his time in England, it's very impressive. Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea picked up 122 points in 63 Premier League games, with only Manchester City and Liverpool picking up more points in that time. Not only did Chelsea get the points and win games and fight back from losing positions, but they kept clean sheets. In the 100 games that Tuchel managed at Chelsea in all competitions, they kept 49 clean sheets, more than any other Premier League side. But knockout football is where Thomas Tuchel comes alive. During his tenure in England, Tuchel won 74% of the games that he played in knockout competitions. Compare that to former manager Gareth Southgate. His win rate in knockout stages was just 54% with England. I believe that Thomas Tuchel is the right guy to get the best out of the most talented England squad of all time. We think about the number of attackers that Thomas Tuchel will have at his disposal. It's a ridiculous level of talent. When you go back and you think about Thomas Tuchel at Borussia Dortmund, for example, he got the best out of Ousmane Dembele in terms of goals and assists, the best out of Henrik Mkhitaryan in terms of just pure assists, the most goals that Aubameyang scored in a single season. Moving to PSG, Kylian Mbappe had his best season in terms of league goals under Tuchel, and Neymar looked like a player absolutely possessed. Moving to Chelsea, of course, Mason Mount played his best football under the German, and Harry Kane scored more goals in a single league season than under any other manager than Thomas Tuchel. I also like what Thomas Tuchel does from a tactical perspective. Yes, he can be pragmatic, but he also can throw in some real curveballs. The likes of Ousmane Dembele playing as a right central midfielder in a 3-5-2 got the best out of the French international. Moving forward to PSG, he fielded Neymar as a false nine, which led to PSG getting to that Champions League final we mentioned previously. And finally, tactical tweak number 3, I want to talk about Callum Hudson-Odoi as a wing-back, because more on that when we're looking at the England team. So let's talk formation, let's talk tactics. Expect Thomas Tuchel's side to set up in a 3-4-2-1 shape, a 3-5-2 shape, a 4-1-4-1 or a 4-2-3-1. But I do think the main shape that Thomas Tuchel will play as England manager will be the 3-4-2-1. Obviously, in terms of Thomas Tuchel's sides, the width from wing-back is super important. Both players playing super wide, super aggressive, but also becoming box threats. Think about Ben Chilwell for Chelsea and Reece James, two players that played their best football under the German. In terms of the overall side, what you'd expect is Thomas Tuchel's England to play out from the back, dominating with their back three and double pivots. In terms of the partnerships, Thomas Tuchel does like playing a regista deep to allow him to spread the play wide with someone that can play a little bit more box to box. The back three very much made up of three ball playing defenders. England are absolutely blessed in that category. His three strikers could consist of two number 10s, classic attacking midfielders, or maybe one playmaker and one second striker that's going to join the number 9 in the penalty area. Alternatively, we could see the shape be really fluid and flexible, with Kane maybe dropping in, maybe as a striker, and we've got two players that can make those moves ahead. So basically playing three strikers, three inside or two inside forwards, and a deep lying forward. But let's get into the personnel. Who's going to play for Thomas Tuchel's England? So let's start in goal. Thomas Tuchel, as we mentioned, is great in knockout tournaments, which means he favours a shot stopper over someone that's going to play out from the back. But that skill is still needed. Obviously, we're thinking about Mendy at Chelsea. Mendy, of course, was fantastic in that Champions League run, had one of the best save percentages in the Premier League. For me, that's why I think Nick Pope, when he gets back to form and fitness, will be the goalkeeper for Thomas Tuchel's England side. He's a keeper that not only is good with his feet at Newcastle, but he is a brilliant shot stopper. Not only that, he sweeps off his line in terms of keeper-sweeper actions per 90. Thomas Tuchel will love someone like Nick Pope, who's got the best record of any goalkeeper since moving to the northeast. So let's move on to the three centre-backs that Thomas Tuchel will field. These players need to be excellent at dealing with balls into the channels or opposition's wingers that have got behind the wing-backs. The big thing with Tuchel's system, we have to remember over and over again, is the wing-backs arguably will play as forwards. They'll get into the final third, they'll stretch the play. Thomas Tuchel doesn't mind that. Obviously, some managers are a little bit worried, but what Tuchel thinks out of his two defensive midfielders plus his three defenders, that he's got 5 players in the rest defence in those positions to counter-press instantly and win the ball back. Going to be a common theme for England. They're going to have to get good at gegenpressing because it's such an important thing. When you're throwing those wing-backs high, there's positions and space to exploit both full-backs in behind the defence, behind the wing-backs that need to be covered. Hence why your two outside centre-backs need to be super mobile and arguably need to be comfortable at playing full-back. And for me, that's where we'll probably see Levy Colwell as one outside centre-back on the left-hand side. Left-footed, great in the duels, good on the ball as well at carrying the ball out into midfield. And on the right-hand side, expect to see someone like Ezri Konsa. In terms of those two players, you need them to be able to be good on the ball, to play through the lines, to carry through into midfield, to draw pressure on. Again, something that you see in Thomas Tuchel possession-based systems is a centre-back stepping out into midfield, drawing that pressure, which opens up space further up the pitch for the two guys that you want to get on the ball, the two number 10s. So Ezri Konsa and Colwell will be in that back four. Obviously in the middle, John Stones is perfect to sit in the middle, to control the tempo and get on the ball. I think we might see John Stones potentially play at times a little bit more offensive. He's got the ability to move into midfield and make that back three. Thomas Tuchel likes using a half-back when he plays either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-4-1, a player that's going to drop back and split the centre-backs at certain times, especially at PSG, probably less at Borussia Dortmund. But going the other way, having a centre-back stepping up into midfield gives you an advantage in that area if needed, and that's exactly what John Stones could do. We've seen him do at Man City, get into that libero position and then start to dictate the play if needed. But those three centre-backs are going to be very good in the duels 1v1. I think someone like a Jared Branthwaite could be a very good option as a left-sided centre-back, but probably better in a back four. So if England are playing a 4-2-3-1 or 4-1-4-1, he could be the guy. So in terms of the double pivot, Thomas Tuchel likes one player that's going to get on the ball and distribute it around and really control the game, and a player that's a little bit more energetic and is going to play more box-to-box. I think in terms of this first part here, let's throw Jude Bellingham in as our box-to-box midfielder. Of course, Jude could basically play any position on the pitch, but I quite like him playing a little bit deeper, meaning that we can get another attacker higher up the pitch. Bellingham for England maybe should be a bit of a water carrier in that sense, the guy that's going to do the hard yards to allow players like Cole Palmer, Phil Foden and the rest to really play making the final third. Playing Bellingham box to box I think is overall going to be where he moves to in football and something that would work really well. I think pairing him in midfield with a Declan Rice gives England a very, very solid base. Declan Rice would probably be the perfect halfback for Thomas Tuchel when he's playing a back four, but will do a great job in midfield. I think as well, if you want to go a little bit more aggressive, maybe you want to play Bellingham into the number 10 area, throwing Maino into that midfield would allow, a real building from the back, a player that's great in under pressure, a player that reads the play really well and jumps well. In terms of interceptions in the Premier League, has made more than any other midfielder. He'll be an option in that position, but we're going to go with Jude Bellingham just to get extra attackers into the team. So I think when we're looking at the right wing back, Reece James would be a great option if fit. Reece James was dominant under Thomas Tuchel, directly involved in 19 goals under the German manager. But I do think, you're looking at the most creative right backs in Premier League history, Trent Alexander-Arnold is number one. He would be great in this position. But at times, Thomas Tuchel's wing backs like to attack the inside positions, forcing the attacking midfielder to move into the wide area and operate more as a winger. We see it from a goal scoring perspective when the ball's on the opposite side, but we also see it in possession, very fluid in those positions. So Trent coming inside, maybe a Palmer going in outside could work really well. But let's leave Trent as a traditional wing-back. Let's not mess about and put him in central midfield. He's so good in those wide areas. His crossing is world-class. Get him to an area where he can go and attack, can get into the final third, allowing someone like Ezri Konsa to mop up behind him like Konate does for Liverpool. You want to get your best players in attacking areas. Get Trent high up the pitch. Moving to the left wing-back, I think is quite interesting in a sense of Ben Chilwell is definitely an option if he can get his fitness back. I mentioned Reece James before. On the other side, if both of those guys can get fit for England, Tuchel has two perfect wing-backs, already understand the requirements of the system, how they play, but both players have been very injury-prone over the last few years. So expect it to be more of a Trent Alexander-Arnold on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, let's get a little bit creative. And that creativity could lead to Thomas Tuchel playing Bukayo Saka as a left wing-back. We mentioned before the threat of the goal scoring of these players, that they can attack the inside channel. But as well, you think what Saka does from a defensive sense, so underrated. Tackles in the final third. He really tops these metrics for Arsenal. So having a player that can press high with the coverage of Levi Colwill in behind him would work really well. We're thinking already we have Trent, we have Saka, we've got Bellingham in this 11, and we've not even spoken about our front three yet. This is what I think Thomas Tuchel's England should do. Lots of attackers, blow your opponents away. I think moving to the number 9 position, Harry Kane is the standout, obviously playing under Tuchel at Bayern last season, had his best goal-scoring season we mentioned before in the Bundesliga. Ollie Watkins is another great option. I think you could even play them together in a 3-5-2 with maybe the central midfielder coming from one of the 10s dropping, and England creating a 3-5-2 shape with two number 9s in, of course, Watkins and Harry Kane, ignoring the number 7, and basically England playing from a defensive sense. We've seen England be able to do this, play with two guys, but not enough. So let's move back to our 3-4-2-1 structure, and I think Cole Palmer is a shoe-in this right attacking midfield position. He's the best player in the Premier League, and this season is blowing up once again, directly involved in more goals than any other Premier League player since the start of last season. The guy is on fire. Tuchel needs to build his team around someone like Cole Palmer. I think the left attacking midfield role is quite interesting. I think you've got the likes of Anthony Gordon, who may be better at being a wing-back under Thomas Tuchel, having that similar Callum Hudson-Odoi option of having a real direct dribbler and then left wing-back position that's going to cut inside on his stronger right foot. I think you've got to look at someone like Phil Foden as well, playing that role. Again, Phil Foden's not been great in England, in an England shirt so far, but we all know the potential. Premier League Player of the Year last season. I think this is the strongest 11, but when you think about players that have done really well under Thomas Tuchel that it could be in and around the England squad, thinking Mason Mount played his best football under Thomas Tuchel in a real hybrid role where it would either be in left central midfield in a 3-5-2, or in that more advanced attacking midfield area. So that's definitely an option, Mason Mount, but obviously it's got to return to form and fitness. You know, question marks with the likes of him, with Reece James, and of course Ben Chilwell. Throwing him out the team and throwing maybe a Marcus Rashford in there as well, again, would have to retain his form and fitness, but he strikes me as someone that Thomas Tuchel really like. Having Kane dropping off the line, Rashford sprinting in behind, definitely has to be an option. Could even throw someone like an Ollie Watkins into that deeper area as well, playing that similar role. But I do think it'll be Phil Foden that will probably be the most, common theme. I think the interesting side about this squad is tactically in game it could move to a number of different shapes. You know, he mentioned that kind of 3-5-2 structure that Tuchel played in the Champions League. You could throw someone like Palmer up as more as a number 9. You've got a 3-5-2 defensive shape, which is fantastic. Drops back to a back 5 when the opposition have the ball in your own defensive third. You've got a lot of pressing from the outside centre-backs. A lot of narrowness in there to squeeze it, to gegenpress and counter-attack if the ball is won. I think that shape is definitely there with these players. I think you could also switch to 4 at the back. Simply Saka goes on the right wing. Levi Colwill moves over. He plays more of a inverted fullback position. Trent drops back to his classic fullback attacking role. You double pivot once again is Bellingham, Declan Rice. Foden goes wide left. Palmer comes into number 10. And you've got a really good 4-2-3-1 that could be with Declan Rice operating as a halfback, as we mentioned before, dropping back in between the centre-backs, allowing potentially both fullbacks to push on. Alternatively, you've got the 4-1-4-1 would also work for this system. Rice being the sole holding pivot. You've got Palmer, Bellingham as free 8s with Harry Kane through the middle. This selection means England could be tactically very flexible. It's something that Gareth Southgate wasn't. Gareth Southgate's changes have been very, very poor as England manager, especially in knockout stages. Tuchel brings a real life to this England team and for me is the perfect appointment. He is the best manager on the market by a country mile. And I think a lot of Premier League teams are going to look around and think, why did we not go for Thomas Tuchel as our head coach? England, in the shape that we mentioned previously, that back 3, the attacking wing-backs in the final third of Bukayo Saka, Trent Alexander-Arnold, 2 number 10s in Palmer Foden, Bellingham playing a little bit deeper in a central midfield position, supporting the likes of Foden and Palmer ahead of him, is the perfect way for England to really win international tournaments. This is a great appointment. I'm very impressed with Thomas Tuchel's career as a manager. Yes, Bayern Munich were very boring last season, but looking at the squad, you probably needed to move a lot of those players on. Thomas Tuchel tried to do that. He fell out with the board, hence his explosion. I think this is different for Thomas Tuchel. When you go back and you look at why Thomas Tuchel blows up with boards, it's usually about transfers. It's usually either letting one of your best players go or not recruiting an area that Thomas Tuchel feels is really, really weak. Doesn't have to do that with England because he has an entire pool of players. But anyway, guys, get into the comments below. What have you made of Thomas Tuchel's appointment as England manager? I've been Statman Dave. Subscribe if you're new. We'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel?